Hello and welcome to another episode of Transforming Business with me, Marvin Schneider, where I talk about all of the tools, technologies, the whys, the wherefores required to transform the global business and investment communities to create wealth on an ongoing basis in ways that enhance the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment. In a lot of ways, what I'm really talking about here is a transformational requirement to create wealth on an ongoing basis by being of service to society. And my core proposition here is that as part of this paradigm shift that is occurring very quickly, about the only way to create wealth on an ongoing basis in any sort of sustainable and fundamental sense is by being of service to society. And so it's the whole paradigm, the new paradigm, is grounded in a purpose underpinned by a noble intent to be of service to society. And another way of saying that is that being in business is an opportunity to create wealth. Yes, that's important, by being of service to society, not an opportunity to make a lot of money by exploiting society. So highly recommend that you follow along, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos up every sort of couple of days, at least once a week. And I've put a playlist together so you can follow with me from the beginning, just follow along in the sequence, because they do build on top of each other. So each episode in the podcast series is an evolution of what's come before. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a significant opportunity to provide large-scale transformation consulting services to a very large cross-section of the global corporate community. And there are about 16,500 very large listed corporations around the world, and that's not even including private companies. And my proposition is that a significant proportion of them will benefit from large-scale transformation consulting services. So let me build the story again, and I'm going to just do a little bit of recap, because what I find is that the story that I'm laying out here is so broad, so expansive, that it's very difficult to consume the whole story in a concentrated amount of time. So what I'm doing is I'm just laying out the story incrementally and then just recapping, just so that we can kind of keep up with the story. So let me share some screens and we'll do a quick recap. All right. Just bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so a couple of episodes ago, I laid out the fundamentals of ongoing wealth creation, and not to rehash the whole thing, but the short answer to the question, what is the nature of ongoing wealth creation? In a fundamental sense, it is the deliberate combination of strategic actions, growth actions, operational and tactical actions that cause the value of the company to be greater than that which was expected over a period of time. And when that occurs, wealth is created to the extent that the value of the firm is greater than it was expected to be as a result of all of these deliberate actions. And that's great. The real kicker here is that if you want to create wealth on an ongoing basis, and by the way, your institutional shareholders actually want you to create wealth on an ongoing basis, then you need to continue this deliberate combination of strategic, growth, operational, and tactical actions, not just once, but ongoing all the time. Every 2 to 3 years, 2, 3, or 5 years, there is a deliberate combination of these things And in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit later about the ongoing nature of this strategy, intention, and challenge. So that's the objective. Ongoing wealth creation should be the fundamental corporate governance objective of pretty much every corporation around the world, and certainly listed companies who have a large, diverse shareholder base, and certainly those companies that are heavily invested in by institutional shareholders who are managing money on behalf of, millions, if not billions, of retirees, superannuants, those kinds of things. Okay. Clearly, doing that on an ongoing basis represents and requires exceptional capabilities. And so there needs to be a very deliberate board governance capability centered on creating the conditions where the board sets the conditions and creates the conditions under which the executive team can implement and execute an intention to create wealth on an ongoing basis in ways that enhance societal well-being. And so it needs to be fundamentally grounded in a purpose underpinned by that noble intent to be of service to society. And the wealth creation outcome, well, wealth creation is an outcome of that intention, not the other way around. So we talked about a very deeply ingrained board governance capability that then dovetails into a very deliberate strategic management capability supported by excellence in operational effectiveness. Excuse me. And more importantly, all of those things need to dovetail into the human aspect of corporations, because at the end of the day, ongoing wealth creation is a human endeavor, and it is a human endeavor grounded in creativity and innovation. So you need to have a culture and leadership capability that fosters innovation and institutionalizes innovation, because at the end of the day, that is how wealth creation occurs, and particularly on an ongoing basis. All right. And so with that in mind, it is really important that there is an integrated series of strategic management processes in place that is focused on ongoing wealth creation, where the governing objective is to create wealth on an ongoing basis in a sustainable, fundamental way, and by being of service to society. That, in my view, is the fundamental governing objective, and that is what boards, in my view, ought to be focused on putting in place in their corporations. With that in mind, we're talking about a value-based strategic planning process, because wealth creation is all about enhancing the value of the firm beyond that which was expected. And then there are a series of integrated strategic management process, including resource allocation, which is based on allocating the required resources to implement the strategy, right? So that's how that's linked. Performance management, but performance management around ensuring that the plan, the strategy that has been adopted is implemented and the financial outcomes are achieved. And then there is an executive reward process, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in a few episodes' time, because there's a lot to be said about executive reward. So, putting in place this integrated series of strategic management processes is really valuable for corporations and really important to cause a systematic, ongoing ability to create wealth. All right. One other thing to say about this, though, is that in my experience, having kicked around in a strategy consulting sense for a number of decades, very few corporations, organizations, companies really have implemented or have in place an appropriate set of integrated strategic management processes. And so in a lot of ways, one wonders how a lot of organizations and how a lot of boards, in fact, execute on their primary objective. All right, so that's kind of my personal view. The other thing that we've spoken about in the past is that ongoing wealth creation and the strategy effort in an ongoing sense really needs to occur at a disaggregated level in the organization. So, yes, in the beginning, there is a large-scale corporate-wide transformation process required, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But once those fundamentals are in place, then ongoing wealth creation is about enhancing the value of different parts of the business at different points in time, so that you're not always doing this big bang consulting effort, across the entire corporation. You're working on, a concentrated strategy improvement effort in different parts of the business from time to time, and this rolls through, over a cycle of 3 to 5 years. You're working on one part of the business in 1 year, and then leave that part of the business alone, and then work on another part of the business in another year, and so on. And so it's really important to focus the strategy development effort and the strategy execution effort at a disaggregated level, preferably at a sort of customer segment level, and then understand the consequences of strategy in terms of economic performance, value, and value uplift. So that's the nature of the strategy effort required. I've also previously talked about a systematic approach to ongoing wealth creation that has a number of elements. So the first element, the green activities in the green ribbon, is all about value measurement at a disaggregated level, because that is the foundation. The next is a set of creativity and innovation efforts, strategy, value proposition, and alternative strategy development efforts, which is the engine room of ongoing wealth creation. And yes, in an ongoing sense, this wealth creation activity, which is ultimately a human endeavor around creativity and innovation, should be focused at a disaggregated level. And sorry, and then there is the implementation of a series of integrated strategic management processes, which we just spoke about. And then, of course, there is this ongoing requirement to fundamentally shift the needle of the dial in terms of people, culture, systems, structures, and processes. And so there's a lot of effort required at the human level and the softer science of corporations. So this gives you a bit of a sense as to the kinds of activities organizations are best suited to implementing as part of an ongoing, systematic, structured approach to wealth creation and the transformation required to be able to do that. And I'm hoping that the listener at this point is getting a sense as to the magnitude of the effort required in a large number of corporations, and why those then may benefit from significant consulting assistance, strategy consulting assistance. I think in the last episode, I introduced you to an assessment framework, which I'm calling the CAUSE OCI assessment framework. It has 2 dimensions. So on the organizational capability index dimension, the horizontal dimension, it is all of the good old traditional capabilities that every organization needs to create wealth on an ongoing basis, including board governance, strategic management, operational effectiveness, culture and leadership, and innovation. But the important thing is that under the new paradigm, which is in play, we are in transition towards the new paradigm, away from the shareholder primacy paradigm. Under the new paradigm, ongoing wealth creation really will only occur in ways that enhance the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment. And so I've previously talked about the elements, the dimensions of um, the new paradigm, and I'm describing that as a cause rating. And cause, the acronym cause, stands for commerce acting to uplift society. That's the CAUS. And the E bit is exponentially, which basically means that it's not a linear extension of a current paradigm. It requires the adoption of a new mindset and a higher vantage point and a higher level of consciousness. So that's what that's all about. My assessment at the moment is that the large majority of companies at this point in time are probably dominated, probably in the lower left quadrant, and a few of them will be sort of spilling, a proportion of them will be spilling into the lower right. But the vast majority of organizations at the moment are not, they're currently heavily dominated in the old paradigm, which is grounded in the corrosive and toxic consequences of, adherence to the, Milton Friedman, Chicago School of Economics view of corporate governance dominated in the shareholder primacy paradigm. Now, here's the thing. You do not want to stay in the lower left-hand quadrant of this matrix for any period of time, because my view is that organizations that find themselves in the lower left quadrant and stay there because they are either unable or unwilling to undertake the transformation to move from the lower left towards the top right won't survive for that much longer. And so most organizations around the world will be somewhere concentrated in this area. And the real objective is to move in both these two dimensions incrementally, not all in one big bang. So there might be a significant push to move, in the vertical direction initially, and then implementing some of the organizational capability requirements, and then moving sort of further up. And so it could be a zigzag process towards, the top end of the top right quadrant, which is ultimately where you pretty much want to be in order to create wealth on an ongoing basis. So there are a number of really important things that boards and executive teams need to act on immediately, or with some degree of urgency. And let me just quickly go through those. Number one, boards and the executives need to fundamentally rethink their purpose. Why are we in business? And if the answer to that question is anything other than grounded in a noble intent to be of service to society in the products and services that we're putting into the market, the way that they are produced and the way that they are distributed, and the economic performance that is derived from that, if it's not fundamentally dominated in a noble purpose, then I don't know what else to say about this. I mean, you kind of want to have that noble intent. Now, a lot of organizations let's just leave it like that. The next thing is that most organizations will need to recognize which aspects of their existing business model are no longer fit for purpose. Now, this is an introspection process. My sense is that the vast majority of organizations around the world, the 16,500 very large listed organizations and the many other tens, if not hundreds of thousands of other companies, will come to realize that there are a significant proportion of their existing business model which is no longer fit for purpose. Now, that's going to be a shocking realization for a lot of organizations, but it's important that you recognize, or that companies recognize, that, for one reason or another, of no fault, But because of the adherence to the old paradigm, the old shareholder primacy paradigm, there are probably a lot of things that companies are doing that are no longer fit for purpose. So you need to recognize that. Then you need to envisage and then implement a bold new participation strategy, which is products and services that are fit for purpose, that fundamentally enhance the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment. And that will require a lot of creativity, innovation, leadership, because it's going to be quite different. And then I'm not going to say the difficult thing, but what requires a lot of strength and leadership and guts, if you like, is to transition away from the old paradigm business model. Now, my sense is that there are trillions and trillions of dollars invested in infrastructure, business processes that are no longer fit for purpose, and it will require a significant investment by a lot of organizations to then envisage and implement a new business model which is fit for purpose. So it will require a lot of investment to create the new future, and it will require and recognize that there is a lot of capital currently tied up in legacy infrastructure, which will not be fit for purpose and potentially will become stranded assets, and even worse, will become liabilities to organizations. So a lot of that old infrastructure needs to be retired. And those that are operating in the climate change debate recognizes that there is a lot of infrastructure invested in, high emitting, fossil fuel intensive capabilities. So, it does require a bold vision and a commitment, and it does require a lot of capital. So then the next point is that we need to invest to develop the new products and services that are truly worthy in the eyes of consumers. And again, that is going to be a human endeavor around creativity and innovation, where the fundamental question is, how do these products and services that we are envisaging, how do they enhance the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment? And then, of course, we need to develop new ways to produce, distribute those products and services, and particularly to do so to minimize the harm and ultimately enhance the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment. I think it's important to recognize that, with a few exceptions, pretty much all aspects of human activity has some negative impact on the environment. But I think the important thing is to minimize that impact on the environment. And one question that needs to be thought about is, if the production and distribution of some products and services are so detrimental to the well-being of the individual, the wider community, or the environment, then you really need to question whether those products and services or methods of producing and distributing those products and services have a place in society anymore. It's a difficult question, but I think it's one that needs to be contemplated, and every board and every executive team needs to consciously answer that question for themselves, because in the longer term, every intention to put a product or a service into the market is a reflection of the mindset of the board and the executive team in terms of the extent to which those products and services either enhance or otherwise the well-being of the individual, the wider community, and the environment. And what I'm laying out here is making those decisions in a conscious way, because the intention to put a product and service into the market is a reflection of the board's mindset on these matters. And then the last need is to put in place the internal systematic approach, systems, process, culture, leadership capabilities for long-term, ongoing, sustainable wealth creation. All right. Now, clearly, that represents a significant effort required in a large number of organizations globally. So here's the call to action. My sense is that most organizations will benefit from some assistance in the transformation process. And this is a large-scale implementation effort, large-scale transformation effort. And so the consulting opportunity here is to assist a large number of companies worldwide. Probably my sense is at least over a 3-year period, maybe 3 to 5 years, and maybe at some levels 7 years. So it's a deep client relationship over 3, 5, maybe 7 years on a large-scale transformation effort. And my sense is for the larger organizations, there will be at least 2 partners involved, supported by a leveraged team of about 7 to 10 consultants at a director level, senior manager level, and then sort of at an analyst level. And in a number of the very large corporations around the world, there might be a number of these consulting units. So at least one partner and a leverage team of 5 to 7, and then there might be multiple of those units operating within different parts of the corporation. So my sense is that there are 2 possibilities. One is that an existing consulting firm like a McKinsey, a BCG, a Bain, a Carney, even a Maricon, and there are other consulting firms out there, might be interested in putting together a dedicated unit within their existing organization that is dedicated to this type of consulting. By the way, there are even most of the big 4 accounting firms now have fairly significant consulting units within them. But my sense is that the only way that this is going to work within an incumbent consulting unit group is if there is a dedicated fit-for-purpose unit, almost like a business unit within the larger consulting firm operating in a coordinated global sense. It needs to be a dedicated unit, because I've gone through this process a couple of times, and what I've observed is a lot of the incumbent consulting firms have competing interests, right? So they've got their existing style of consulting, and trying to tack this onto the back of what they're already doing isn't going to work, because it's going to get diluted and it won't have the intention. And you've got too many competing interests. The partners are typically unwilling or unable to put the attention and effort in, because they're too worried about losing their existing client revenue, because this kind of consulting is, look, it's transformational consulting. So that's my sense. So my call to action is, if there is a McKinsey, a Bain, a BCG, a Carney out there, or another global consulting firm that is willing to put together a dedicated unit or group that is tasked with this very large-scale transformational consulting, please get in contact with me because I can help you build this firm or this unit within the firm. So please get in contact with me. I've got the tools, I've got the capability, I've got the experience. I need the arms and the legs, and I need the other people will bring the client relationships, but it will be it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be really rewarding. And you will be leaving a major legacy in the business community. So that's that opportunity. The other possibility is that, and this is a very real possibility, is that for one reason or another, the incumbent firms are either unwilling or unable to do this for their own reasons. And so it is entirely possible that we will need to build a brand new consulting firm from the ground up that is dedicated, 100% dedicated and focused on this kind of transformation consulting. So if you are a senior partner with deep client relationships that is ready for a change, ready to leave a legacy, again, please get in contact with me because we can start building this firm and rolling it out in a structured, systematic way, in a coordinated global effort. And by the way, if we do end up building a consulting firm dedicated to this, the firm itself will be operating on exactly the principles that I've laid out, and they will not be dogged by the organizational inertia that I see that exists in existing firms. So there's the opportunity. Please get in contact with me. Either way, if you're the CEO or a senior partner in an incumbent firm, get in contact with me. If you're serious about building a unit within the firm, that's a possibility, and it will be a profitable venture. And the other alternative is we build a firm from the ground up, one way or another, because seriously, the companies that need to go through this transformation will require a significant amount of assistance. So the need for consulting is there. And this is going to go well beyond, last year's ESG mindset. This is way broader than that. So there you go. There's the challenge, the call to action. Please get in contact with me. And then if you're interested in a little bit more information, follow along, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go onto YouTube and search for Valuation Insights. That's the name of my channel. And the name of the podcast series is Transforming Business. So there's a whole playlist you can follow through. Thanks for tuning in. Look forward to catching up with you next time, and bye for now.